Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, episode 3. I am here with my good friend, Cory Camp. Cory, how are you?
Joe, the fact that I'm episode 3, I'm lit up. I'm excited, and I can't wait to see you next week, man. I'm pumped.
I know. I can't believe you're going to be on the East Coast. I guess a little bit of background for anybody who's listening. Cory and I connected. Wow, I don't even know when it was at this point, right? Probably a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Beginning of the pandemic, just through social media. And at that time, you had just left your full-time job to pursue entrepreneurship, I believe. And I was thinking about that. And we really just hit it off and we followed each other's journeys and we're co-authoring a book together. And, it's crazy how the world works.
Just doing some small projects here and there together, right?
Of course. But Cory, why don't you kick it off by just giving the audience a little bit of an introduction about who you are and what you're all about?
Man, I hate that question. For context, for those that don't know me, I would say I'm a creative, I'm a connector at heart as a human being, and I try to bring those two things into everything that I do, whether that be how I'm showing up on a social media presence, the coaching that I'm doing with people. I really work with people to create their ideal lifestyle. I got tired of being in the fitness industry and hearing that same excuse over and over. I don't have time. I don't have time to make the changes that people would want to make in their life. So I said, well, what if I start coaching people to create the time that they want in their life, to create a harmonious life where they're finding flow on a day-to-day basis? So I'm an active learner. I'm a lifelong learner, and using my experiences and my just never ceasing curiosity to better myself as a human, I try to then help other people in that process. So a little bit about me.
Yeah, so we are on episode 3, and I'm going to go ahead and say that was the best introduction anybody's given so far. And you're beating out me on the first episode and Sam Tooley on the second episode. So no shade to Sam, but that was pretty good. And it's interesting. I've been thinking about how I want to introduce myself and being more intentional with that, because for the longest time, I've introduced myself as I'm Joe Rinaldi. I'm a physical therapist, performance coach, writer, speaker. But you came right out and you said connector. And I thought that was so unique, and it's very appropriate for you. You are one of the best connectors that I know. And for me, I think it's about helping people find strength in struggle. And I'm learning how to phrase that and how to really embody that when I meet new people. And really what Project Endure is all about is doing hard things in the pursuit of becoming better. And so I think a good place to start, Cory, is if we maybe dig in a little bit to when you left your job and kind of what led to that decision specifically and what the transition was like for you. Because I would imagine that, it was kind of hard.
Yeah. It definitely hasn't been all butterflies and rainbows. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I left that one day and was immediately making the same amount of money that I was making at the time, and the insurance, all that fun stuff that comes with choosing to go off on your own. Really, the start of that was COVID, was the pandemic shutting everything down. I was working as a assistant fitness director at this country club just outside of DC, and my days pretty much looked like similar to yours in physical therapy. I was waking up around 4. I guess I was sleeping in by your standards, but waking up around 4, going into work I'd leave my apartment about 4:45, 5 in the morning, and I wouldn't get home until about 8:30 at night. And then rinse, repeat, do that again Monday through Friday. And then I would choose to run a learn to swim clinic on Sundays, and I would just call it, that was my light day. I would still go into work and I would work 5 hours and then just on repeat for like ever. And there's a couple of things that I had noticed that I didn't love about that kind of lifestyle. One, it was that constant, I was trading my time for money. Like I was on a salary position, but most of my actual income was coming from seeing clients, teaching classes, teaching swim lessons. So if I was never actually physically there doing those things, even if I took PTO, it looked very significantly less.
Mm.
And it wasn't until when everything shut down that I really had time to think of alternative options to that. I knew I wasn't happy with it, but I didn't have time to even sit and think of an alternative way forward. So giving myself that space was really when I started to think, okay, how can I make a larger impact beyond just this traditional always trading time for money? Like, how do I scale myself and my impact beyond just how do I just show up for this hour that we're going to sit down and record this? How does that reach a bigger impact beyond just you and I having this conversation? Podcasting is a great way to amplify that. So I started creating some courses, some online courses, one of which was called More Than Movement. It's really geared towards helping people streamline their life. And really it's former athletes transitioning out, learning the meta skills from athletics into whatever they're facing now. And man, it was really cool. I was really excited about it, but I wouldn't say it never reached that point that I was like, wow, this is crushing it. It didn't look like exactly as I wanted to. And that's one of the things that I've learned through entrepreneurship is very rarely does it ever look exactly how you want it to. And that's okay. What I've learned is just any sort of feedback that I'm getting, it's not a definite like, oh, you're a failure. That's a permanent reflection of who you are as a person. It's just some feedback of that point in time. What are you going to do with that piece of information moving forward? That's how we got here, man. Like a little over a year later.
Yeah. And I think, to your credit, you've built something really, really cool on your end. And I admire the podcasting specifically that you do. I think the conversations that you have with people have an impact that's so much greater than just two people talking to each other. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, was to have meaningful conversations that other people could listen into. And I think for me, the entrepreneurship route has been challenging and equally not exactly what I expected. And I think the hard part for me is managing the volatility of emotions that come along with entrepreneurship. And you're laughing.
Yeah.
But there are days where you feel like you're on top of the world, and then the next day you feel like you just got ran over by a semi truck, and you have to pick yourself back up and keep moving forward. And so for you, I'm almost wondering, is entrepreneurship the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose in life? Or is there something else that you've intentionally sought out that's been more challenging than entrepreneurship?
It's a really good question. I would say yes and no. Give
Tell
you
me,
a little
tell
bit
me
of
more.
both. So yes, in the sense of it's the hardest because there's no finish line. Like it's what I've chosen to do for an indefinite amount of time. So then I can create finish lines from there and create projects and all that. But it's a lifestyle. So it's like a forever thing. You know what I mean? Pun intended with the company name. No, in the sense of from like a physically and mentally hard standpoint, I've put myself in harder situations, but they've been for finite amounts of time. Like there was almost an end in sight. So you can kind of buckle down and be like, yo, okay, like whatever, I got this, I'm going to power through. Whereas entrepreneurship is this wave. And just like the waves in the ocean, like they don't stop. They might slow down. They might be high tide, low tide, but they're going to keep coming for at least the foreseeable future.
That was such a great way of putting that. And I think what I'm understanding it from your point of view and from my life as well is that hard is relative. And, you can have something that's really, really hard for a short period of time, but something else might be equally or even more challenging that's at a lower level of difficulty, but happening for a longer period of time, or like you alluded to, even without a finish line. And, speaking of finish lines, you mentioned swimming earlier in the podcast. I know that was a big part of your life for a long time. And I am biased because I already know your story. But my other question for you is, what is one of the hardest things that you've ever been handed in life? That could be a circumstance, something else, but the hardest thing that you've dealt with that you didn't have a choice in. And I think I know where you're going to go with this.
Yeah, I was about to say, you know my cards at this point. I mean, that's what I think you and I really connected over that first call that we had together was this
Mm.
shared, we were kind of dealt a less than ideal hand in something that we really were passionate about, we cared about. So for context, I ended up going about a year and a half, almost 2 years with an undiagnosed heart condition that thankfully ended up getting solved. But that coincided with that's first started my senior year of high school, getting ready to go through the recruiting process, starting to get some looks. Like for those of you that grew up athletes, you know what that dream is like when you're a little kid and you want to get that D1 scholarship because that's the validation that you've been seeking all these years. I felt so close to getting it, and I'm starting to have that one dream and one side of things come to fruition. I'm starting to get some looks from some different colleges, some different coaches calling me, texting me, emailing me. It was great. And then on the other hand, one Saturday morning, I collapse on the pool deck, go to the ER, and they can't find anything wrong with me. That was really frustrating because I'm supposed to be 17 years old. I'm supposed to be in my peak athletic prime at this point of my life. And here I am, my body's failing me. And to make it worse, I mean, the doctors, the first time they were like, it's just a freak thing, like just happened, probably won't happen again. Maybe your blood sugars were off. Fortunately, it kept happening time and time again. And then I think what even got the worst advice I ever got from one of the cardiologists that I saw. They were at GW. I'll never forget them because I remember sitting in his office, and he goes, "Well, if this only happens while you're swimming, why don't you just stop swimming?" It's like, excuse me, what? Like, that's my dream, sir. Like, you're gonna need to back off with that way of thinking. So, yeah, I mean, dealing and navigating the unknown of I would pass out at practice once or twice a month and didn't know when it was going to happen, how long it was going to be for. And yeah, balancing that with trying to fulfill that dream and trying to just fit in and be a normal kid at the same time. Like a part of that, I had to go to, wore a permanent like heart, now I'm blanking on it, like an EKG, portable EKG monitor on me to high school for a month. Wow. I was like, this is like the worst thing ever to be 17 years old and to have legit wires rung up to you. I'm just like, I'm already self-conscious at 17. Just trying to figure out who I am. And now you add some wires, people are asking questions. That was a challenging time.
Yeah. And as you were speaking, I kind of heard different layers of difficulty. And so, I think when I think of something that's hard, hard is a descriptor within itself, but within that, you have the frustration of not being able to perform at the level that you want and know you're capable of performing at, the uncertainty of the future and what this means for your swimming career and just for your life. And then maybe a little bit of disappointment and discouragement that you're not able potentially to pursue the path that you really, really want to pursue. And so from that experience, right, you went to Delaware, and from my understanding, you swam at Delaware, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I was able to, fortunately, going through that senior year fall, took a recruiting trip there to Delaware. And I was hiding part of this too. Like I was hiding this part of me from the coaches I was talking to. Because I think everyone's biggest fear is to fully put their cards out on the table and realize that that's not enough, or be told by who they choose to show their full self to, and being met with, that's not good enough. So living into that, I finally, for whatever reason, I felt comfortable enough disclosing all of that information to the head coach there on my recruiting trip. He just looked at me and goes, Cory, it doesn't matter what you're going through. Like, we're going to go through this together. We want you on this team. I was like, oh, everything that I was seeking was just hand delivered to me. And while I still had the condition, still would pass out, that hard thing became just like that much easier because I knew I had the support from the top down, and I was finally accepted for fully, like for the first time, with who I was.
Yeah. And then just for context, how did the swimming at Delaware pan out once you were there? What did that look like for you?
Um, Really good. Like,
You're allowed to brag. You're allowed to brag.
so I think, I mean, now it's a couple of them have been broken, but 7+ school records,
Wow.
multiple MVPs, team captain for 2 years, CAA rookie of the year, my freshman year. I was still navigating the heart condition my freshman year. This was pretty interesting. I would still pass out at practice, right? And I didn't really tell the team doctor what was going on all the time. So it gets to be about a month out from CAA's conference championship. It's like the one major meet, our Super Bowl of the year. And I pass out at practice. And for whatever reason, that was one of the few times that coach told me to go see the doctor, maybe because it was so close to this. And I told him what was going on. And he's like, "You've been having this the whole time?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why didn't you tell me?" I was like, "Well, because I was seeing cardiologists and specialists. Like, I didn't think the generalist needed to know, but yeah, probably should have told you too." And he goes, "Well, if this happens one more time, I can't clear you to swim in the conference meet." It's like, oh my gosh, here we go. I had learned at this point that these episodes would happen under periods of high stress. So obviously, again, telling me that I wouldn't be able to compete in the one thing I've been training for all year kind of correlates to a lot of stress. Sure enough, next day, have one of these episodes at practice. And I turned to my distance coach. He's the only one that notices. And we just kind of lock eyes, and he goes like, "Is it happening?" And I just shake my head no. Even though, for context, for everyone listening, during these episodes, my heart rate, the only time it was measured was at 350 beats per minute.
Goodness.
And my blood pressure would tank. So I would lose vision. I would lose feeling in my hands and my feet. So I'm going through that. I can't really see anything. I'm losing vision. I can't feel like I'm about to pass out. And he asked me, "Is it happening?" I just nope. He goes, "All right, just like catch your breath." And I go, "Yeah, I'm not doing anything else when my body's doing this." But we left it at this mutual understanding of like, he knew that I knew what I was doing. And thankfully he did, because then fast forward a month, I had the best meet ever by a freshman in school history. So the rest was history from there.
Oh man, I have so many follow-up questions. But first I need to say, we have known each other for about 1.5 years. We have talked for hours together. I didn't know any of those accolades or achievements or accomplishments that you had. So you are extremely humble. Thank you for sharing those.
Thank you.
And two, before I ask some of the deeper questions, just out of curiosity, because I don't even think I know this, how did the heart condition get resolved? Maybe I do know this. Did you have a procedure?
Yeah, I did. So I had an EP study with possible catheter ablation. We'll nerd out on this for a second. We'll lose some of your listeners with the scientific terms. So for context, what that meant was it was a study. So it wasn't a definition, like a definite, "Hey, we're going to solve this." I was fortunate to be hooked up with a cardiologist in Delaware at Christiana Hospital, which is very near to campus. And he said, "Hey, I think this is what you might be dealing with. We won't know until we're in there figuring it out." So they went in with these catheters through the veins in my groin all the way up to my heart. They had a scope. My IV got pumped with adrenaline to stimulate the stress response. Sure enough, that's when they noticed my heart rate over 300, around that 350. And while they were doing that, they saw it was literally 3 to 4 cells on my AV node that were sending non-uniform electrical impulses, short-circuited back up to the SA node. So the normal heart functions SA, AV, bundle of fists, come on back. Mine was saying, "Hey, that's cool that you want to go all the way. We're going to short circuit this and just make your heart beat faster." So these literally 3 to 4 cells were causing me all these issues, and they just ablazed them off with some major heat. And
Wow.
I had about a 2 month recovery period, some really gnarly swelling all through my groin.
Oh,
That was something really interesting to feel like I had put on 100 pounds just of bloating. Not really 100 pounds, but that's how I felt.
yeah.
And yeah, thankfully, no episodes since have been fine.
Wow, that's amazing. And right after you were recovered from the surgery, you were cleared to swim and then you were just back at it?
Yeah, I timed the surgery really well. Conferences was end of February, early March. I had the surgery done right around my 19th birthday. Like, talk about
Wow.
a great birthday gift to myself, solving this issue. And then, yeah, that I just didn't really swim that senior or that freshman year, spring. I would kick a little bit in the well, and that was about the extent of what I was allowed to do.
Yeah. I mean, so I have experience with eye procedures, so
Mm.
laser surgeries, injections, things like that. But I would imagine that if I ever had to go in for a heart procedure, that I would be like preparing to not come out, even if that wasn't, a high likelihood. Did you
Yeah,
go into that surgery pretty freaked out about what would happen, or you felt okay?
I felt okay, believe it or
Yeah.
not. Uh, just because the doctor was like, it's a 50-50 shot that we do this
Mm.
and it works out and we solve the problem. And I was just focused on, holy crap, that's so cool that there's a 50% chance that this thing will be solved. I'm game. He could have told me it was a 10% chance, and I would have been like, let's do it. Let's run with it. Otherwise, the downside, because they went in through the veins of my groin intravenously, I didn't have, it wasn't like going into an open heart type
Gotcha.
deal. So the risk, at least in my eyes, as it was explained to me, or I guess how I chose to interpret it, was worst case scenario, I have 2 months of recovery for nothing
Gotcha. All right.
type
Well,
deal.
so you're focusing on the upside and, it makes sense. And I'm glad it worked out. And, to circle back to Delaware, when you first decided to swim there and you shared kind of that vulnerability with the coach and coaching staff, I think when we think of hard things, there are two choices or two directions that we can go. Hard
Mm.
things can elevate us or they can also drag us down. And I think there's some magic recipe in the middle that's a little bit obscure and maybe is different for every person and every situation. But I think that outside support and acceptance are two really big ones. And you
Mm.
had both of those at Delaware. If you had to say, I mean, what are some of the other things that helped elevate you through this hard season of life, outside of the support you had and your teammates and coaches and the acceptance you had at Delaware? I'm bringing
Mm.
out the deep questions 20 minutes into
Yeah,
the podcast.
I think what ultimately really helped was I was actually seeing like improvement in my swimming for the first time in a couple of years. Like, throughout my junior and senior year, I kind of hit a plateau as far as my best times were concerned. So what really helped me through, especially that freshman year, just my overall confidence, I was starting to get close to my all-time best times in season, which just like not necessarily normal.
Mm.
So the fact that I was getting positive feedback from kind of going into this, I've learned is really, really crucial in just my confidence and ability to keep going. It's translated over, man, into running a company. It's like I'm game to bang my head up against the wall for however long it takes, but please give me some glimpses, some signs that I'm doing it in the right direction, that it's worth it. You need those little wins here and there. And I think my coach freshman year really helped me key in on those little wins, shifting it even from, okay, forget about the times of the meets. Last time we did this set, you held X times for X amount of repeats. Why don't today we try to hold that same time for more repeats, or get that time down for the same number of repeats, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So is that visualization and realization of progress along the way, no matter how small, that was helping lift you up through that hard season. And it's interesting because I had a conversation with a client recently who felt as if they were banging their head against the wall. And they brought up the quote, the Albert Einstein quote, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I thought it was interesting because it was almost contradicting one of my favorite analogies, which is the woodpecker analogy. I'm not sure if you're familiar, for anybody listening, woodpecker, is up on a tree, and however many thousand times they have to peck to get through that barrier to what they want to get to, right? They're pecking and they're not getting the outcome they want. And if they just went around and they pecked on 1,000 individual trees, they would get nowhere at all. And so they have to be able to trust the process, even when they're not getting the outcome. But I guess along the way, a woodpecker is seeing that they're making a little bit of progress here and there. And I'm curious in your life, Cory, maybe now for entrepreneurship, in those seasons when things are hard, when maybe you're not seeing progress in the way that you want to see progress, I mean, do you have a system as to how to work around that, how to make adjustments, how to track adjustments for people listening? Maybe they're not entrepreneurs, but they have, a side hustle, or they're a student, or even in a relationship, they want to improve, but they're not seeing the progress. What would you say to somebody who's in that spot?
I would encourage them to bring awareness to it. So I love to track. Like, I'm a data nerd. Give me something where I can gamify the situation. I'm gonna do it. One of the things I have here on my desk is my wins log. So each day I'm writing down wins from the day, like what went well. How can I end the day on a high note so that I can sleep better that night and then be more well rested to go into the next day. But tracking things has really, really, really helped me. And you can only manage what's going on in your life if it's measurable. So finding a way to measure some things, keep track of them, check in with yourself. I do a daily power down at the end of every day where I'm reassessing what was the intention of the day. How did I do in following that intention? How does that align with the weekly intention, with the month, the quarter, the year? Like, where does that all stack up? And having that ability to kind of zoom out, but then also zoom in, and knowing when to do which, I think allows me to course correct. I'm still learning how to do this better, but course correct in real time, of knowing the difference of, I'm this close to where I want to go, or am I legit just banging my head against the wall and making like no progress at all? And it's futile for me to keep doing this way.
That's a great point. Measurement is very important. And I think it would be valuable for the audience, Cory, if you could take us through your morning and evening routines. And I should preface this with the fact that I am super impressed with how you interact with your phone with intention. So, just give us the rundown, because I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah. Which one do you want first, morning or night?
Whatever makes most sense to you.
Okay. I'll go backwards. I like going nighttime routine first, because I'm a firm believer that the nighttime routine, if you get that dialed in, that sets you up for that morning routine. So primarily what that looks like for me, around 6 p.m. Pacific each day, I'm going through what I call my daily power down, my daily debrief. So I'm going through texts, answering any texts that I need to answer that evening, going through DMs, going through emails, kind of tying up all possible loose ends that if I don't, then they're weighing on my mind that evening. From there, the moment that all of those are answered, the phone goes off and away. Because I know if I don't do that, what good does tying up loose ends? Like, everyone hates texting someone that they text them a day or two ago and they finally answered, and then they get answered right away, and they're like, oh my God, I tried to get rid of that mental to do and it's back. So putting the phone away is crucial in that point. From that, then I'm going to my journal of, okay, what did I do today? How did that stack up? Where do I need to go? And I'm going into my calendar and looking at, okay, I have this work block tomorrow and this work block. This is what I'm doing. What do I need to do to prepare for each of these. Going in, getting super detailed there. I like to say just making it dummy proof so that I can just show up and execute. And then I'm laying out clothes for the next day. Super simple. And then eating dinner, hanging out, decompressing. And yeah, by the time reading a book and then heading to bed. But all of that, try to follow Brendan Burchard's rule of that 3-2-1 strategy. Like eating about 3 hours before bedtime, 2 hours before phone or work is away, and then 1 hour before bedtime, no screens. And it's amazing what that does. I mean, talk about stuff that gets measured. Like my heart rate variability, thanks to Whoop, is unmatched when I follow that routine with some consistency versus when I don't adhere to those boundaries and I let the phone creep over and everything else just kind of hits the fan, as they like to say. And then morning routine, same deal. Like I want to be really proactive heading into my day. I think so many people reach for their phone first thing, and that just sets them on this reactive cascade into the day. So I'm big on, I have an analog alarm clock right next to this computer here, and phone's not coming on for that first hour. And then when it does come on, it's very intentional. I have it set up so that I'm not seeing all of the texts that came through or whatever came through in the evening into the morning. I want to make sure that I'm checking that stuff on my terms. I'm not letting that bombard me from a day to day. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, I'm journaling in the mornings, usually trying to get outside, stretch a little bit, get some movement outdoors, drink some water, and jump into the day from there.
That is incredible. And just out of my curiosity, how long are you sleeping each night on average?
About 7.5 to 8 hours or so.
Yeah, solid. Do you have any strategies for really good sleep that happen outside of those routines? Like, do you keep the room really cold? Do you do anything special, or are you just a good sleeper?
I'm a phenomenal sleeper. If I can get great at it, thanks to Whoop, I can. No, I mean, I'd say I'm big on like just overall environment. I have an eye mask, earplugs. I live right on Pacific Avenue in LA, so it can get very, very loud and noisy at night. So I just pray that the earplugs stay in. They don't always do. Temperature is a huge thing. Comfortable bedding. I sleep with a chili pad. I don't know if you've heard of them, but that conducts some water underneath me, about 55 degrees, and it's prime, man. I'm really spoiled with that because it's made it really hard to go elsewhere and travel and get that same quality night's sleep.
Yeah. Everything is optimized. And for me, when I think of doing hard things, I think of doing hard things, running, lifting, taking cold showers. But one of the hardest things for me is not doing something. And I think this is a great segue into what you have coming up. And by the time this podcast is out, it'll actively be going on. But tell us a little bit about the dopamine detox, because I'm on the fence. Maybe you can convince me, but tell the audience about it.
Most people are on the fence with it so for context, what the challenge is, I'm running a 30-day challenge from November 1st through November 30th with people's relationship with their phone. 30 minutes a day on social media max, 3 hours of screen time on their phone max. The whole thought process is, because there have been no boundaries for so long with both social media and phone usage, a lot of our really dopamine response, what we're seeking to get, needs to be delivered with more and more frequency. That's why when you start to open up the Instagram and the scroll, you just keep scrolling because you're not getting the same amount of dopamine hit that you did when you first downloaded Instagram. You're like, this is the coolest thing ever. I get to see what Joe's doing in Philly, and I can see what Cory's doing over in LA. Now it's just kind of, your body and your brain has become numb to it. So it just like you build up a tolerance for any other substance in your life, dopamine is no different. So this is a opportunity for people to reset their dopamine baseline, what actually stimulates them and gets them dopamine is a phenomenal driver into flow state.
Mm.
We know that when we're looking at flow states game day in the zone, dopamine is being flooded into the brain, but we want to recreate our dopamine baseline so that really important experiences, aka holidays, spending time with our family, can elicit hopefully a more profound neurological effect for us than checking the phone. So it's for trying to help people just be a little bit more present this holiday season.
I absolutely love that. And as you were speaking, I just pulled it up real quick on my phone here. This is embarrassing, but my daily, this is really embarrassing. My daily average screen time is 8 hours and 58 minutes. And that's down 6% from last week per my iPhone. So, and it's really interesting because I've never looked at the breakdown here, but 7 hours is on Instagram. And I know I'm on there quite often because it's tied to my business and a lot of my communication happens through DMs and things like that. But I didn't realize it was that much. And it's crazy because, and I know Sam and I on my other podcast, we talk about this frequently, but it's that thought process where you say, all right, I'm not going to touch the phone. 10 seconds later, the phone is in your hand, Instagram is open, and you don't know how you got there, right? Hands up. Yeah.
Pick me.
It is insane how that happens. So I really, really love that. And question for you, more selfish, for this challenge, for the dopamine detox, if somebody has business to do on Instagram, one, are there exceptions? And it's totally fine if there's not. And two, if I'm on Instagram on my computer, does that count as different screen time than on my phone?
You're finding the loopholes. Well, one, let me offer a piece of advice because I know you're not the only one.
Yeah.
I fall victim to that. The number one thing that is going to serve as a habit like blocker for that subconscious habit of phone is up and next thing I know I'm in and I don't even know how I got here. Turn off raise to wake. If you go into your settings, go down to display and brightness, I believe, raise to wake feature. If you turn that off, at least you're adding friction. All the coaching that I do with people is either adding friction to break bad habits, making it harder for them to execute the bad habits, the ones that don't serve them, or how can we reduce friction and make things just simplified and buttery smooth to execute on the good things. So that's one way that we can introduce friction to a habit loop that probably isn't serving you at all times. To answer your question, I mean, I think the best people get really, really creative when given some crazy circumstances. Even with that, it might be a bit of a challenge to go from 7 hours down to 30 minutes. I think you've done harder, Joe.
That is so true. And I'm the type of person where if somebody gives me a challenge, I'm going to try. So you know what? Count me in, Cory. And for anybody listening, I think it would be really cool to hop into this. And now, so this is going to come out a week into the challenge. Now, Cory, if people want to join the challenge a week in, one, can they do that? And two, if so, how do they find more about the challenge?
Yeah, 100%. It's open throughout. I mean, I think we'll be running it for the whole month of November. And then if they want to check it out, they can either go to foreverathletela.com or they can shoot me just the word detox at 301-747-0718. I hope I got that number right, but shoot it a text. And if you get a response, you got the number right.
Awesome. I'll throw that down in the description. Hopefully I get it right. I know 3 phone numbers. I know my old home phone number. My parents don't have a landline anymore, so that's useless. I know my dad's cell phone number and my mom's cell phone number. I could probably get within 2 digits of my wife's cell phone number, but that's about it. Oh, and mine, so 4. But you know, I think for anybody listening, you can't see Cory because this is only audio, but Cory sat up real tall in his chair when we started talking about the phone, and I could tell how much you care about it. But, you know, Cory, I want to be respectful of your time. We've talked about a lot of great stuff. And so I've got 2 more main questions for you and kind of wrap things up with these. But one question for you is, the name of this podcast is Project Endure, the Project Endure podcast. And endure is short for endurance. What does the word endurance mean to you? And you could take this in any direction that feels right.
To me, it's just being a victor of your circumstances, no matter how long circumstances might be going on. But who is going to outlast that hard thing? And to me, it's always, I strive to put myself in situations where I'm trying to answer that question for myself, rather so that I'm better prepared for when life is going to throw me that curveball and I'm all of a sudden without a job or trying to figure things out. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons I started Project Endure and the Hard Things Club, to be more specific, is I see so much value in doing hard things on a consistent basis because it trains us to be able to handle difficult things. And whether it's a cold shower or waking up early or spending less time on your phone, all of those things are building resilience. And to me, and I don't know where I heard this, resilience is endurance with direction. And I think when we know where we're going, or at least we know where we want to go, so we have direction, and we can move with endurance and be consistent over a long period of time, that's resilience. And those are the people that you and I know about. Those are the people that are making big impacts in the world. And I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, then this resonates with you. Unless you found us randomly and you're listening to the third episode and you're 40 minutes in, kudos to you. But I think with that, Cory, you know, I want to ask you, if somebody listening to this podcast is going through something really hard, maybe they have a heart condition, maybe they're losing their sight, maybe they lost a loved one, or maybe it's something different altogether. If you could just give that person, that one person, a specific message as to how they should move forward, what they should think about, what they have to look forward to, I don't know, whatever it is that you want to tell that person that's listening, what would the message be?
I love that question.
Thank you.
And I used to, I love people that are like, let's go. And like, just keep going would be the cliche. I like my interpretation of that. My advice to that person really is keep growing.
Oh, mic drop.
Similar to your tattoo that you just got. We're going to go through growing pains. And when we're in a growth spurt, if we're in a hard period of our life, it's really tough to see the other end of that. But know on the other end of that, you're going to be a much better person. And top of that, you're going to have a really cool freaking story to come on and share on Project Endure. Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, that resonates for many reasons, but yeah, my tattoo is a sprout coming up from my wrist toward my elbow. And the quote behind that is, sometimes when you're in a dark place, you think you've been buried, but you've actually been planted. And I think the really, really hard thing about that, like you said, is when you're in that hard season or you're in that dark place and things hurt, things don't feel right, it's really hard to have that perspective and to say to yourself, oh yeah, like things will get better. It's really, really hard to do that in the moment. But when you look back on it with hindsight, you can see that, oh yeah, I grew through this season of life. Things, maybe this happened for a reason. This was happening for me, not to me. And I think it's really hard when you're in it. So I would add to that to find people in your life who are going to help you through that difficult season. Because one of my biggest pet peeves is when people say they're self-made. I don't think anybody is self-made. It's impossible. But find people like Cory, find people like me, find people who have been through those things, who want to help you, who are there for you, who care about you. And I could speak for both of us, both Cory and I, that if you're in that dark place or that hard season and you need some encouragement or somebody to reach out to, we would both be happy to field that call and to connect with you and help in any way we can. Hope I didn't put words in your mouth, Cory, but.
No, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to add that piece of just, I'm big on this concept of life teammates, creating the environment around you, being very intentional with who you're choosing to be on your team, of as you're going through life. And it does really help to have people that are on the same page as you, and that you feel like you can go unbiased, unobjectively, let them know how you're actually feeling. You know what I mean? If you're going through something hard, sometimes what you need the most is just someone in your life that you can share that with. And they don't even need to have an answer or solution or way forward. Sometimes it just feels damn good to feel heard, understood, seen, and supported. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I couldn't have said that any better myself. And, so Cory, as I give you a chance here to tell people where to find you, I also want you to just maybe give a brief summary of kind of the book project we've been working on, because that's really cool. Obviously I'm involved, I'm biased, but I think people need to hear about it, and what better person than the lead on the project. So yeah, why don't you tell people about it?
Yeah, man. So the book, for context, should be available, hopefully. I don't even want to put a date on it at this point. It's going to come out soon. It's titled Forever Athlete: How to Tap into Your True Identity Daily. And what I'm really jazzed up about this project, like you said, it's a co-author project. So there's 18 different perspectives being shared over 18 chapters of what does it mean to be your true self. And what I love about that is there's no one right way to be you. Well, actually there is. It's just be you. But everyone does it a different way. And every chapter is told in a different voice, a little bit of a different story, a little bit different language. And the goal is to have that relate to as many people as possible. And if you pick up the copy, you'll see a little bit of yourself in everyone's story. And that's what I think is really cool about it.
Yeah, I can't wait for it to come out whenever that is. If you're following Cory and or I on social media, you'll know about it. So definitely do that. And Cory, speaking of which, where can people find you if you're on Instagram for 30 minutes a day? How can they connect? Let us know.
Very intentionally. On Instagram, it's just at Cory Camp. And then website is foreverathletela.com. Then we got Forever Athlete Radio podcast, available on all platforms and YouTube.
Nice. And what episode are you on right now?
Shoot. 147, 148, somewhere in there.
So you have 145 episode head start on me, but I'm coming for you. Okay. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, if you want to keep up with the 2 a week pace, be my guest. It's a lot. You know that.
Not a chance. If you're listening to this podcast, expect 1 a week on a consistent basis. And if you're looking for other good stuff, check out Cory's podcast, his Instagram, his website, and just connect with him, because he's a really, really great dude. So Cory, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Joe, thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh, and one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.